Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Excuse me, Mr. Boggs? Is this a bad time?
No, not at all. Sorry, my daughter was just teaching me some totally awesome dance moves. What can I help you with?
After lecture today, I was a little bit confused of the events of the Irish potato famine. Would you be able to explain it a little more for me, please?
A good place to start is the Great Irish Famine, which began in 1846 and continued to 1852. Fungus destroyed 1/3 of the potato crops in 1 year. The Irish depended on potatoes so heavily that when the crops failed, it completely changed the diet, economic production, and carrying capacity in Ireland. There were 750,000 deaths and 2 million left their homeland for Great Britain, Canada, and the United States. Men and boys who have never gotten in trouble with the law before were purposely committing crimes to get arrested and shipped to Australia. Many did this just so they could eat.
Oh, that makes sense. I know you mentioned the political economic effects of the Irish potato famine in lecture, but I was wondering if you could elaborate the role that the political economy had in the famine?
Well, since the potato was such an important food staple, once the blight occurred, this had huge implications for the food supply and employment of Irish people. For instance, under the British rule, peasants were not allowed to own their own land. Therefore, they relied on potatoes to feed their families as well as to earn an income. In 1 acre of land, farmers could grow triple the amount of potatoes as any other crop food. Employment was also disrupted as public works projects shut down, factories and industries were sparse, and local agricultural production had been disrupted.
Oh, that reminds me of a term we learned in lecture, intensive production, which is increasing your output without increasing your inputs.
Yes, awesome connection to lecture material.
I read in Standish that the scale of devastation was unlike anything seen in some parts of Europe since the Black Death. Did other parts of Europe step in to help Irish during this time period?
As I previously mentioned, during the Irish famine, the Irish people began to immigrate to Great Britain, Canada, and the United States. The British became irritated that the Irish were invading their countryside. In response to this, the British came up with a law called the Irish Poor Law Extension Act in 1847, which dumped the cost and responsibility of the famine upon Ireland's property owners. As a result, there was no support because other parts of the world were experiencing this too, so they weren't as generous in providing relief.
Read that Ireland was a barter economy. How did the potato famine affect that?
Well, a barter economy is an economy built on exchanges of goods and services rather than currency. In their economy, the potato played an important role on the economy because they traded potatoes for other goods and services. Also, people needed potatoes to survive, as it was a main food staple. Therefore, when blight occurred, their economy was ruined.
Oh. Okay.
Furthermore, to add in a political element, we can now look back and review what the government could have done to limit the potato blight. First of all, they could have stopped the export of grain from Ireland, which would have allowed more food for the country. The government could also have stopped mass eviction of Irish families from their homes. And they could have bared the cost for relief for many Irish families.
That also reminds me of another term we learned in lecture, presentism, which means to interpret past events in a modern-day mindset.
Great connection. Another example of this comes from Mr. Coogan, an Irish historian and journalist in the 1960s, who suggested that the economics Britain implemented failed, and that it is possible that Britain's actions were deliberate. It could also be suggested that the poverty experienced by the peasants were self-inflicted. You seem to grasp numerous course concepts. Well, now we know you will be very informed if a blight was to ever break out in St. Catherine's.
I sure hope so. Anyways, thank you for your time, and see you in lecture to further discuss the Irish potato famine. Bye.
Okay, ta-ta for now.